Good evening and welcome. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Mike Babin, and I'm the president of the HKVCA, the Hong Kong Veterans Commemorative Association. I'm very proud to be the son of a Hong Kong veteran, Alfred Babin of the Royal Rifles of Canada. Our topic this evening is We Remember Hong Kong, a Hong Kong time capsule. Now, many of you have attended previous events, so please just bear with me for a moment while I say a few words about how this virtual event will work for the benefit of the first-timers. The camera on your device is not activated and your microphone is muted. So that means we cannot see you, nor can we hear you. But you will have the opportunity to ask questions of our speakers both during and after their presentations. At the bottom of your screen, you should see an icon marked Q&A. If it's not there, try tapping on the screen and you should see that icon appear. You can use this icon to send a text message with your question at any time during the presentation. When you've typed your presentation, then just tap close to return to the presentation. And at the end of the presentation, our speakers will answer your questions. We've also set up a Facebook page for you to discuss the presentation and ask further questions, and I'll tell you more about this in more detail later. A final note, we are recording this event, and the recording will be available on the HKVCA website, hkvca.ca. Don't hesitate to recommend it to your family and friends. I'm sure they'd like to watch it too. So now let's go to tonight's program. The HKVCA's mission is to educate Canadians on the Battle of Hong Kong and on its effect on the battle survivors and their families. Now, I hope you found that our previous 5 virtual events have contributed to supporting that mission. As of today, only 4 of Canada's Hong Kong veterans remain alive, which makes it all the more important that we continue in our efforts to keep alive the memory of those Canadians who sacrificed their lives and their health, and in many cases, their family relationships in their defense against an expansionist, aggressive, and ruthless Japanese military. Nearly 16 years ago, an energetic and committed group of young people did exactly that. And this evening, you'll hear about what they did and why. Our speakers are Nancy Strahl and Kevin Drennan. Nancy was a high school teacher who led the group, and Kevin was one of the 200 students who participated. Nancy Strahl taught French immersion, history, and Indigenous studies for over 30 years as a teacher at Port Perry High School, just east of Toronto. In her last years before retirement, Nancy spent 5 years as the Indigenous Studies Facilitator at the Durham District School Board. She's an award-winning teacher, having been recognized by OHSTA, which is the Ontario History and Social Studies Teachers Association, the Hong Kong Veterans Commemorative Association, and the Métis Nation of Ontario Veterans Association. She is a recipient of the Minister of Veterans Affairs Commendation for her work with veterans. She was awarded the 2008 Governor General's Award for Excellence in Teaching Canadian History and the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Medal. And Nancy's work was also featured on the CBC documentary The Eighth Fire in 2013. She's been a keynote speaker at Ontario Tech University's Faculty of Education and has given workshops at the School of Education at Brock and Trent University. And currently, she sits on several committees at Ontario Tech University. Nancy is a devoted daughter, wife, mother, and teacher, and she spent her teaching career showcasing students' work and achievements through various national and international projects and publications. Born and raised in Port Perry, Ontario, Kevin Drennan spent his youth as a musician and went on to study classical piano performance at McGill University in Montreal. After obtaining a business degree from the Ivey Business School, Kevin joined the consulting firm McKinsey & Company, where he supported clients on projects ranging from strategy to marketing and branding. Kevin now lives in New York City and is reconnecting with his artistic roots by joining a startup in the arts and theater industry. Kevin was honored to be able to travel to Hong Kong in 2005 to honor the experience, bravery, and sacrifice of our Canadians in World War II. And he joins us this evening from New York. So Nancy, let me, after that introduction of you and Kevin, let me turn things over to you. And you need to unmute your microphone. Let's start.
Here we go. Can everybody see that? We're good? So hello, everybody. My name is Nancy Hamer Strahl, and I'm speaking to you from Curtis, Ontario, which is on the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation and the Williams Treaty. And this presentation is a look back at the life-changing and heartwarming story of the student pilgrimage to Hong Kong in 2005. The young people who went on this trip were accompanied by their teachers and parents and 6 veterans. And they went to Taiwan and Hong Kong to show their gratitude in person to the Canadian soldiers that fought there and to those who were buried at Saiwan Cemetery. So a memorial capsule accompanied the students, and it was designed to prepare those pilgrims, those students, for the events at Saiwan Cemetery. The 200 students made the pilgrimage to Hong Kong, and more than 200 other students from across the country and as far away as Japan and Hong Kong contributed to its contents. And what they contributed was, the idea was that each student create a short story, a biography, a poem, a song, an artistic piece, and all of this to be included in the memorial capsule. And 400 entries came to us, and we found that the whole experience and being at Saiwan in 2005, literally at the end of the year of the veteran, was a fitting end to that year. And as we approach the 80th anniversary, a look back at this pilgrimage is timely. So who participated? Well, grade 10 students, their teachers and parents from the Durham region. And as you can see, 7 schools in the Durham region participated, and 220 people signed up to go. And I want to add that each one of them paid their own way and to Hong Kong and China. How did I get involved in this? Well, I'm going to tell you, it all started with a student, and most of my work always revolved around questions that students may have had about history, and especially during World War I and World War II. So I said, look, if you have a family member who fought in World War I or World War II, maybe you might want to tell me who they are and also where they fought. So the next day, Brody, a student in my class, brought this newspaper article and said, I want to learn about my grandfather, my great-grandfather. He said, all I have is this picture, and I know he died pretty young at 41, and that he also, I don't know what happened to him. No one seems to be able to answer any of my questions. And so, to be honest, I really didn't know very much at the time because I didn't have it in the curriculum or even in my textbook. So I had a lot of work to do. So luckily, we were able to attend the Ontario History and Social Science Teachers Association conference in Toronto. And wouldn't it was just incredible. My husband and I went, and then we both looked at what was happening and who was giving presentations, and we saw that George McDonnell and Nick Brune were giving a presentation about the newly published 10 lessons to help teachers learn about Hong Kong. So we both went, and we were really eager to find out more about Brody's great-grandfather. And George's story was incredibly compelling. It was unbelievable. We were so impressed with his story that we invited him to Port Perry High School. George McDonnell spoke at one of our fundraising events. So we would have fundraising speaker series. And so the money that we were getting for the speaker series would go directly to the students to try and bring down the cost of the trip. So he came to our school and spoke on the eve of our departure for Normandy. And the room was made up of students and parents, and we had advertised in the local papers, and many, many people came from the Durham region to hear George speak. We knew something, we had struck a chord with the community, because this was just such a little known story and the students were really interested. And when it was all over, we took George into my classroom and we showed him the Juno Beach time capsule, and he immediately gave me a copy of his book, A Soldier's Story, and said, could you take this to Juno Beach? And so we put it in the capsule and off we went to Juno, and now that time capsule is in the Juno Beach Museum in Courcelles-sur-Mer in Normandy. So what happened after that was a bunch of us teachers got together and started talking about George's presentation and how great it was, and how we felt kind of committed that maybe we should do something about teaching other teachers and students about the story of Hong Kong, because we didn't know a whole lot about it at the time. And we felt it was really important that Canadian students and Canadians at large learn about this story. And so we met, and Dave Robinson, who organized the trip to Normandy, kind of looked at us and said, you know, we should go to Hong Kong. We should go to Saiwan. And so that's when it all started. And the idea for the pilgrimage began. So for the next year, students were signing up. Dave Robinson got in touch with Explorica, a travel company who specialized in educational travel, and started getting people to sign up to go to Hong Kong. And I spoke to Pat Turcotte earlier that year, and I sort of said, you know, we really need your help. And Pat was awesome. She was instrumental in getting things going and getting in motion. And it's what she did was she invited us to go to the national convention in Ottawa. So my husband, again, accompanied me to Ottawa, and we got to meet the most amazing people at this conference. And you might recognize some faces here. And many family members and veterans helped us to connect the students to a member of C-Force. So we did a presentation to the families and veterans, and it was super well received, and we knew help was on our way. We were going to get going on this in a good way. So as I said before, Dave Robinson spearheaded the fundraising opportunities. He worked on the trip and organizing that. And we had information meetings for all of the students on a regular basis. Students were given ample fundraising opportunities. And so they had car washes, walkathons, dinners, a huge yard sale, and of course our popular lecture series. And we had Vivian Poy and George McDonnell speak at those. Now we also got so much help, and the HKVCA was amazing. And Mike, thank you very much for all the help that you gave us. You were very supportive, and you wrote a lot of letters to the Governor General, Adrienne Clarkson, to ask for her support. We later received generous support and patronage from Senator and Chancellor of the University of Toronto, Vivian Poy, and introductions were made by Nancy Sue, and was awesome because she got us in touch with people like Charles Zhao, who taught us Mandarin for a trip to China. So I have to also say that Veterans Affairs Canada paved the way for us to bring a remembrance capsule to Hong Kong, and they organized the ceremony and the accompaniment of the veterans that came with us. And those veterans were Jerry Gerard, Ed Shaler, Phil Doddridge, Doug Rees, Flash Clayton, and George McDonnell. And it was really quite exciting for us to be there. So where do you start? Well, you start with a very motivated group of people, and those were my students at Port Perry High School. And they began their journey by learning firsthand from Flash Clayton, and he brought his wartime bride and sweetheart, Jessie, and they were really helpful, and they came several times to Port Perry High School to tell their story. And we also had George McDonnell come and speak to the students. And so they were really ready to go. We also did a lot of studying of the background information of the battle, and we used information from Veterans Affairs Canada and the Hong Kong Veterans Association website, and we started to contact people from all over Canada. And here you have local family members of Hong Kong veterans also supported us, and we were able to attend the November 11th ceremony that year with the Lee family, and to commemorate the Oshawa veterans who fought in Hong Kong. And it was a privilege for my students to lay the wreath with the family. And so, you know, the students started to get to see that this was really important, that their mission would be to tell this story. After the wonderful visit I had with my husband in Ottawa, we asked for them to send some help, send some documents, send letters, send anything they could to help us find out more about the veterans. And this slide is just a little bit of a, you know, look at what people sent us. They were incredible. I sent, on behalf of the students, I sent letters out to every Hong Kong Canadian veteran who was alive, and also to their family members. And I know as an educator, this is, that history only comes alive when you put your heart and minds into it. A personal connection is really key. And it makes the connection to the person, not just to the event. And then all of a sudden the story becomes more than just a statistic extracted from a dull history textbook, but it becomes a soldier's story. And here you see some of the articles and artifacts that we received from the Bell family, from about Larry Corrigan. We extracted some, I guess, documents from the Veterans Affairs website. Just to piggyback on what we talked about last time, we did do an entry for Ferdinand Poitras, who is a Métis veteran. So we thought what we'd do is we'd follow the same formula that we used to take the Juno Beach time capsule to Normandy in 2004. So this was our second time around. We perfected it, and our students would adopt a veteran. They would write the commemorative piece to show their appreciation. And also it was a way to help connect them to become the caregivers of these stories. So, but we remember Hong Kong Memorial Capsule is a memorial capsule. It's not a time capsule. We're not going back to open it up. It's meant to stay in Saiwan. So students, what we did was we gathered information. I assigned a soldier to each student, and we assembled the information in the classroom, and we basically stuffed a lot of envelopes and put in, as you can see, I think there are Veterans Affairs, a booklet on Hong Kong, students labeled, and put an individual diskette, oh yeah, technology in those days. And then we sent that off to 200 students, and we waited. And I just want to give a big shout out to a few people who really helped us. Captain retired Vincent Lapata for sending us his booklet on Seaforce decorations, medals, and awards, the Veterans Affairs Archive, and most especially to the families and veterans who participated in providing the information we needed to make sure that 200 travelers adopted a veteran, and also for information to send off to the other 200. And I still have all of the letters that people sent, and I had a wonderful, wonderful time going through everything, and it was quite touching. The Hong Kong Memorial Capsule was created by students in the Bob Porter's Technical Studies Department. And he made sure that these students created a capsule that could withstand the test of time. So weeks after, the time capsule was prepared, and I would say in November, we started to get entries from students from all over Canada. We had to learn, I had to teach the students how to curate the entire contents in a professional way. So we definitely got help from our local Scugog Shore Museum staff, who provided us with the knowledge and equipment to do the work. As you can see, everything was wrapped up in acid-free, I guess, some sort of a plastic wrap anyways, but it was acid-free, so it would protect the documents. And certain things that we received from family members were really unbelievable. Lila Beatty gave us a Hong Kong pin to put in the capsule to honor her brother, Kenneth Beatty. Glenn Lee gave us a petition sent to the city of Oshawa to have street names changed in honor of the Oshawa veterans. And just to follow up on that, they did get their streets. That year, there was a lot of attention in the press, and newspaper articles and all sorts of things were popping up. And so we sort of decided that we would have a meeting with the mayor to see if he could fast track this along. So invited Hong Kong veteran Flash Clayton of the Royal Rifles, and then one of my Juno vet friends, Jan DeVries. He was a first Canberra veteran, first one, who landed in Normandy, and the family's request. And so who could say no to Flash Clayton? They didn't, they did it. So it took a while, but in 2013, the first HK veterans had a street, and more were to follow. So I learned this. I learned that the key to creating a memorial capsule was motivated people, a few computers, some 400 diskettes, a scanner to digitize the artifacts, and a CD burner to save it for posterity. I'm gonna let Kevin continue from here.
Sure. Thanks so much, Nancy. And before I jump into my section of this, I just wanted to take a moment to thank you all for being here and for inviting Nancy and I to share this experience. It's been really powerful over the last few weeks to sort of remember everything that went into this that Nancy's already shared lots of. And my value add here will be sharing a bit of the student experience and a bit of the student voice, both my own, sort of what I was thinking at the time, and on reflection, what has come back to me. And then also trying to share some of the voices of other students who were around at the time as well, many of whom I'm still connected with today. So Nancy's going to flip through a few photos that are just sort of showing the process, the sausage making that happened as we were putting the capsule together back in 2015, or rather 2005. And as I was preparing for this conversation, two things sort of hit me that I think were just interesting. One is, and Nancy's already alluded to this, that from a student perspective, you start a grade 10 history class expecting to learn from a textbook, expecting to read a lot. You're probably writing some essays, you're maybe watching some videos. I think none of us had any idea that we were getting into something as immersive and as engaging and as real and as important as we did. And so the opportunity that I think we had as students, whether or not we were each going to Hong Kong, I was lucky enough too, but for anyone in these classes that year, this was sort of our major focus, our major project. And it was by far the most enriching, I think, experience I ever had in the classroom during high school, because it personalized the whole experience of being Canadian, of the values that we stand for, of what we fought for, of what the veterans fought for, and it made it much more real and honest and powerful. So I think that was just a sort of once in a lifetime learning opportunity for all of us. The second thing I'm thinking about is, I think it also matured us a lot, right? If you put yourself in the mindset of a grade 10 student, your life is kind of like your world. Like you're a bit myopic at that age, I think, or certainly I was. And so learning about these men who were not terribly older than we were at the time, who made, many of them, the ultimate sacrifice, And we were now part of that story and contributing to it and making sure that it will continue into the future was enormously clarifying, I think, in terms of sort of we are very, very small people in the world, and there are much more important things going on than what, you know, our small grade 10 experience is. And I think that having that experience at that point in our lives was really, really just transformative for relatively young students. And then I thought I would just read, Nancy, if you want to go to the page that has a photo of some of the students in the class who worked really closely on the time capsule, I think it's 23. I just thought I would read two reflections from two people that are in this photo that thankfully Nancy collected during the process of putting the capsule together. And the first one is from someone named Molly, who is in the very center of the photo with long blonde hair, holding one side of the capsule. And at that time, back in 2005, she wrote, "I'm Molly Morrison and I'm 15. I've never done anything like this capsule before this year, and I found that it's a very rewarding experience. I've had the chance to learn about the Battle of Hong Kong and the soldiers who served there. I have so much respect for them because they endured hardships that I will never fully comprehend nor endure. This is why it was so important for me to contribute my time and effort into this capsule, and I can only hope that one day, many years from now, it will be appreciated." And then the second person who I thought I would share is named Chris, and he is in the back row. And I was going to say he's the guy with the long hair, but looking at this now, clearly the style was long hair because that doesn't narrow it down. But he's the guy in the back row, third from the left, with his eyes a little bit closed with long hair. And he said, "My name is Chris, and I've had the chance to help create a piece of history. I'm in grade 10, 15 years old, and this project has taught me so much about the Battle of Hong Kong, which is not nearly talked about enough. I have learned and met these veterans and listened to them tell me their stories of loss and heroism. I was able to go hands-on, actually touching artifacts rather than learning through a textbook. These stories won't be around firsthand forever, and I'm glad I had a chance to listen to these veterans' stories and experience a part of important history in real life." So I hope that gives you a bit of a sense of what the sort of experience and the meaningfulness of working on this project was for all of us back at the time. And I think, you know, we had our initial reactions to it then. I think with time and the ability to sort of marinate on the memories and everything that we learned, I think we, you know, the gratitude has only grown. So, so that's sort of what the mind space that we were in. And then the last thing I thought I would do in this section is just share my own contribution to the capsule. And as Nancy mentioned, each of the students who went to Hong Kong were paired up with a veteran. And the name of my veteran is Franklin Lister. And just as a bit of context, Franklin was born in 1918 in Drummond, Quebec. And before heading over to Hong Kong, he served both in Quebec and in Newfoundland. And he passed away on Christmas Eve in Hong Kong. And so I wrote this poem, which is relatively short. I'll read it to you now. And so this is when I was I was 15 in 2005. And it's called Inspiration for a 15-Year-Old. October 27th, 1941, a day that changed your life. December 8th, 1941, a day that changed Hong Kong. Christmas Day, 1941, a day that changed your world. You went overseas to fight for my rights. How could you know war would reach such heights? October 27th, you leave your home life behind. Stops in Hawaii, the Philippines, then Hong Kong. Bravery, the thought in your mind. Not long at all after you arrived, battles were fought, you fought to survive. Outnumbered in men, 6-1 at best, the task at hand, an unpassable test. Repulse Bay Road, Titan Bay, places on your journey you shouldn't have had to stay. You learned too well in a time too short that war is not a spectator sport. Although you're gone, your spirit is not. You are to be commended for the lessons you've taught. Thank you, is all there is to say. Your bravery and passion inspire me today. In memory of Lieutenant Franklin Nelson Lister. So that poem, along with the contributions of 400, was it, Nancy, other students who were paired with veterans, are in the capsule in Hong Kong. And I think Nancy's been flipping through some of the photos of the other submissions, which ranged, as she said, from art to poems to songs to reflections. It was really a mixed bag, all of them quite powerful dedications, I think. And then the last point I'll just make from a student perspective is that not only the students in Canada and from across Canada were involved, but we were able also to have students studying in Hong Kong at the Canadian International School research their grandparents who served alongside the Canadian forces in Hong Kong. And so they were very often related to the students there. And so they were able to also discover this part of their grandparents' histories and contribute to memorializing the contribution that they made in the war as well. And Nancy, I think I'm handing now back to you.
Thank you. I just thought that I would talk about how this project ended up going nationwide. At the time, I was privileged to attend national conferences. And the one that I think really helped along was through the Historica Foundation. And I was able to contact teachers from across the country, and then I kept their emails and I invited them to participate in the project. So we had students from Nunavut, basically, to Entry Island. This is an ulu that was sent from the Northwest Territories, and it's in the memorial capsule, and it represents strength. And they've said that it represented the strength that the veterans had. And another touching story is a story about, we'll go back here, a story from Entry Island, a community in Quebec. And I think we were given the names to contact from another veteran, and every student at that elementary school and high school was related to a Hong Kong veteran. And it was a 4-year-old wrote about her great-grandfather, James Walsh, and she said, at home, you were a boat builder and fisherman. And he did die in Hong Kong in 1942. And what's amazing is that her story is enshrined in the memorial capsule, and it will forever be within the site of her great-grandfather's grave. And we had the honor to do this for her community. So we left on November 24th for Hong Kong, and we went to China afterwards. And so we came back to Hong Kong on December 3rd to the 5th. So I just want to give you a few slides about where we toured. So this is the traditional getting on the bus, the yellow school bus, and heading out to the airport. And you can see we were ready to raring to go. We arrived in Hong Kong, and what's really amazing is that you can see this memorial capsule that was, I think Kevin said he was part of the team that wrapped it up in bubble wrap and duct tape. And we left it there. And with, I think, I guess the embassy in Hong Kong, and we flew off to Beijing. And you see students here that are in Tiananmen Square. It was quite an interesting trip for them to see Hong Kong, to see Beijing. They were building, I guess, at that time, buildings for the Olympics in a few years. It was quite something. You went from very, very modern to very, very old. So I don't think students have ever experienced anything like that. We then ventured off to the Great Wall of China. So we climbed that, and it was quite interesting to see the students see the sights from this incredible monument. And then we went to Xi'an. And when we got there, our tour company had arranged for a, I think it was like a traditional cultural dance, and it was very beautiful. And then we went off to the Terracotta Warriors. And to me, that's like the Grand Canyon of historical artifacts. I mean, you just get in there and you just, you can't drink it all in. It's just so massive and so beautiful. And we were able to tour around there and have a really close look at that. We then went off to Shanghai, and part of a lot of what we did on our trip was, we had to, if we went for lunch, we went to a factory store or something. And then when we were in Shanghai, we were given the opportunity to visit a sample ordinary family. And they took us up into their apartment and were really gracious, showed us around, gave us some candies, and it was really quite nice. As we left, I asked the gentleman here what he did for a living, and he said he was a government official. So, okay, I guess he was pretty high up there, but they were very, very kind. And here they are in Shanghai for a class picture. So I guess now we're going to talk about our time in Hong Kong and the cemetery that we went to, Saiwan. And I just wanted to say that we were really honored to be there. And I want to thank the support and the financial contributions of the Hong Kong Commemorative Veterans Association, because they secured a location for the capsule and they donated the plaque. So that is amazing. So this is when we arrived early in the morning, and we kind of unwrapped the plaque and we placed the time capsule in its proper place. A hole was dug so we could put it in. And then we went off to the main event, which was the ceremony for the veterans. And this slide is very important to me because it was a vision that Flash Clayton had. And I was sitting at his kitchen table in Brecon, and he was drinking a beer, and he was just sharing his thoughts with me about the trip and what he was hoping that we could achieve. And he said to me, I want to see Canadian faces lining the stairs down to the cemetery. And he showed me the picture on the left of a previous pilgrimage with cadets and scouts lining the steps of Saiwan. And he said, I want to see 200 students lining one side of the steps leading to the graves. And I want to have the students joined by 100 Hong Kong Canadian Scout groups and another 100 cadets from the Hong Kong Adventure Corps. And so they walked down these stairs lined by students and faces from home and from Hong Kong. And I'm going to pass this on to Kevin.
Great. So we thought we would try to bring the ceremony itself to life, mostly through photos. And the first one that you're seeing here, I think, is the arrival. As Nancy mentioned, there was a beautiful setup of the students, and then many students were able to escort our very important guests. And this is Jessie Clayton, which is Flash Clayton's wife, on the left-hand side here, being escorted by 2 other students of mine. On the next page, you'll see 5 of the veterans who were able to come with us, and I'm sure you'll recognize many of the faces, but on this page, we're seeing Phil Doddridge, Doug Reese, Jerry Gerard, Flash Clayton, and George McDonnell. And Ed Shaler was also there, as Nancy mentioned earlier, but isn't in this photo. And on the next page, we have Flash giving a beautiful speech to the entire group, with students and cadets and a mix of people in the background. And after that, there were also student contributions during the ceremony, both sharing their experiences on the trip, but also reading some of the submissions that were going to be put into the capsule as well. And then there were a number of wreaths laid representing various parts of the trip and groups that were involved. You see Senator Poi on the left here, and Phil Doddridge on the right. And then a photo of yours truly, many hairstyles ago, on the left, and a friend of mine, Leslie, on the right. And we were able to lay a wreath from Port Perry High School, representing all of our colleagues and teachers who were involved. And then each student laid a poppy and a cross in front of the grave. If there was a grave there for the veteran that they were associated with, they were able to do so on their grave. And it was extremely powerful to make that physical connection with people who we'd gotten to know over the 6 or so months prior. It brought it all very much to life in a quite powerful way. And just some more photos of everyone who was able to be there. And then we get to the actual ceremony to bury the capsule. And you can see on the following page that happening. And then everyone who was in attendance was able to take a handful of dirt and lay it on top of the capsule to start the process of burying it. A really powerful moment, of course. And then Nancy, this is you, so I'll hand it back to you to share about this moment.
Okay, this is sort of I guess a coming around full circle for me, because started this off with my husband and we finished it together, and we both put in some dirt and also some poppies, and I'm actually wearing the sister to a poppy that was created for me by a family member of a Hong Kong veteran. And so it was truly a labor of love, honor, and respect. And I believe that these young people made history that day. And the veteran story became real. It was of a personal nature. It was a relationship that they created, and that they will never forget this relationship they had with their veteran. And I just want to commend the students and the staff that worked so hard to get these students to Saiwan. And these students were touched by a life, and they will carry their memory with them for the rest of their lives. And here is the poppies that are in the resting on the memorial capsule. So we wanted to make sure that students would remember. And these stories were so precious and so beautiful that we needed to protect them. We wanted to do this in order to remember the individuals who fought there, because it was a way for us to say thank you. And I just want to also learn something I learned from George McDonnell, and these are his words. He told us, despite their varied backgrounds, veterans all shared a dream. They dreamed of a free, secure, and prosperous future for Canada and its people. The story of C4 teaches our students that democracy was fought for and remains for us an eternal struggle. And these words inspired us very much. But just in case we needed a little reminder, I made sure that their contribution would be saved. And this was by creating the accompaniment of for the trip of a book to keep their memories from fading. And it's just absolutely beautiful. I spent the summer of 2006 creating and picking the stories and just putting the book together. But I also had the help from my very talented friend and teacher colleague, who is now retired and has become a world-renowned photographer. And this is Thomas Brash. And he helped make the book visually stunning. And because we wanted these memories to be passed on not only to the students who went, but also to their children, because yes, these kids are now 30 years old and plus, and so they do have children now. So Thomas and I worked together, and today, I guess maybe, when you think about what happens after an experience like this, well, Tom is now producing art that commemorates and honors victims of violence from around the world. And he started this journey with the tribute to these worthy veterans. And the book, like I said, is absolutely beautiful. And if you look at, I guess, the book here, you can sort of see, some of the seeds of where he took his art later on in life. Ooh, I'm just going a little bit too far here. So I chose the stories and the pictures, which were in the publication. And I also asked that each student send, oh my goodness, I'm going backwards here. There we go, that each student send a picture of themselves And also a picture, we wanted a picture of the veteran so that we could bring this back together. So you can see previously you saw a picture of, I guess, this beautiful tribute to Lance Ross, and this is how we ended up showing it in the book. So you see the student, the veteran, and the veteran as a young man in Hong Kong. If you're looking to maybe get a copy of this, Tom was very forward thinking, and he had uploaded the book on lulu.com. So you can still get a copy if you'd like to. So the students, again, here is Phil Doddridge's entry. And I think I am passing this off to Kevin now.
Yes. Well, we thought we would end with a sort of look at the long-term impact of this pilgrimage and the work that went into it. And I thought there's sort of two ways to do that. One is through the voice of the student, and one is through the voice of sort of media coverage and the impact that it's literally had in keeping these stories alive since 2005. And so on the student side, this is a friend of mine, Meg Fraser, who was paired with Jerry Gerard as her veteran. And I thought she just beautifully summarized sort of her aspirations for how this could affect the world going forward. So I'll just read not this whole thing, but just a piece of it that really resonated with me. She says, to me, and this is again from 2005, included in the book, to me, there are so many reasons why it is important to remember our veterans. Remembering can help stop future violence and make people more aware of what really happens during battle. It can discourage those who think of war as a game from thinking that way, and maybe even influence our nation's leaders. But I believe the most important reason to remember our veterans is because they deserve it. They made unbelievable sacrifices and displayed more bravery than most of us show in a lifetime, and not many people recognize that anymore. I truly realized this when I had the chance to meet a veteran whose life I researched for the We Remember Hong Kong Memorial Capsule. Being able to meet someone who had made these sacrifices and showed such bravery made history real. History was no longer something to be tested on in class, it was this person's life. It was his memories and his past, and it would always be in his and my future. Hopefully it will always be that way for our country as well. I just thought it was beautifully written and a sort of a hope for the future that we can continue remembering all the sacrifices that were and are continuing to be made in the name of Canada's values and freedoms. And then the last point just to make is it was gratifying to see that there was, beyond the trip itself, a huge amount of interest from various media organizations, both at the national and sort of Canada-wide level, like the Toronto Star here, but also at the local level within Port Perry, the town that Nancy and I are from. There was lots of interest. And even Rogers created a video that was compiled from the trip and told the story of the trip and the capsule and the veterans. And I think, Nancy, you were saying it continues to play every Remembrance Day until last year. I think you said you saw it. And so that is, I think, amazing. Like, our goal was, of course, to teach students at that time very particular and personal stories of veterans that were meaningful and powerful for them, and made history real, as Nancy said earlier. But it also was about telling the story of this battle and about sacrifices that were made to an audience who didn't know about that. And so it's gratifying that there was that interest then, and that the interest continues. And I hope we continue seeing that going forward. So I think we're going to wrap up our presentation there. And Mike, you tell us what to do, but I think we're happy to take questions if there are any, or whatever would be useful.
All right, well, thank you very much. First of all, that was an amazing presentation, and the event itself was obviously fabulous. So thank you very much for that. I'm sure we'll have some questions. So just a reminder to the audience, if you do have a question, on your screen, you'll see something marked Q&A. You might have to tap the screen in order to make it appear. And just type in your question, and it'll come off to us, and we will try to answer your questions. So we do have a few here. So the first one, Rhonda says, this isn't a question, but I wanted to share that my great uncle died during the battle. Rifleman Porter Pratt of the Royal Rifles of Canada. Thank you so much for honoring all of these brave young men. And I'm sure many others out there this evening feel the same way. Another question, or not a question, I guess. Thank you all for your passionate efforts to help keep C-Force in our minds, and they will always be remembered. God bless you for the time to share your stories. So are there any other questions out there that that people have? Now is the time to ask them. I think maybe people are shy this evening, Kevin and Nancy. Or maybe their fingers are seized up. I'm not sure. All right, well, okay, well, here we have Pat saying beautifully done. Not phrased as a question, but as a very emphatic statement, and I agree, so thank you for that. Ida says, thank you for sharing. What you've done was remarkable. And she wants to know me, I know what's next to making this history rememberable. Nancy, maybe she's asking you that question.
Well, I'm still working at the with student candidates who are in the School of Ed. So just trying to pass on that passion for history and trying to make it very human and connect with students in a personal way and just deviate a little bit from the textbook and really dig deep and do some good research.
Well, that's great. I think, and from my point of view as well, this series of virtual events that we've been running is the HKVCA's one of our ways of trying to keep this story alive in the minds of Canadians. So, you know, we encourage all of you to share the links, because we have the recordings of these events. There'll be more of these events, and please share them with your friends and your relatives. A couple more comments here. Judy says, what a wonderful opportunity for the students, the vets, and all involved. My dad, whose brother and uncle were all in Hong Kong, and her uncle's name was on the wall in Saiwan, so not on a tombstone, but on the wall in Saiwan. Helen says, thank you. Her father was a POW, and she offers her sincere thanks. Jessie Ho makes a very similar comment. Jason is in Hong Kong currently and wonders if there's anyone out there possibly planning any events for the 80th over here being in Hong Kong. The one event that I'm aware of is that on the first Sunday in December at 10 o'clock in the morning, there will be a commemorative ceremony at the Saiwan Cemetery, the same cemetery that Nancy and Kevin have talked about. And that ceremony is hosted by the Consulate of Canada in Hong Kong. So that's on the first Sunday in December, and which I think is December the 6th, I'm not sure. And so if the COVID precautions permit, because last year they did not permit a gathering, but if the COVID precautions do permit, Jason, you and your family would be welcome to attend that. I'll also point out, pardon me, that ceremony will be live streamed on Facebook. So we over here in Canada will be able to watch it at the same time. Judy says, thank you for all your effort you did to keep our soldiers' memories alive. And she said, my dad's other brother is buried in France. Bruce, again, thank you from Bruce. The true meaning of democracy, it is a synonym for struggle. He says, the struggle to nurture and protect the future of the one belief that will save civilization. Winona says, how wonderful this was. I had 3 uncles there, all of whom fortunately returned. Norma says, thank you so much. We were very moved by this presentation. I saw my dad, John Doiron of the Royal Rifles, in one of the first slides, and his story is in the capsule. And Leanne, whose uncle was John Doiron as well, was POW. He was from PEI, and Leanne says, thank you for a beautiful presentation. Leonard says, thanks so much to all. The defense of Hong Kong first came to my attention in Winnipeg, where my twin was a Canadian Forces musician and was assisting an Army Cadet Corps that perpetuates the Winnipeg Grenadiers. As an infantryman, I later learned more about this action. So obviously we have a lot of people this evening, Nancy and Kevin, who were very appreciative of your presentation this evening, but most particularly of what you did back in 2005 to do all of the work with the veteran stories, with writing the material or preparing the material that went into the capsule, and to making the trip to Hong Kong to leave the capsule behind. So let me see, I think that's it. I don't see any more questions. Oh, Kevin says, any plans to get the students together in person or online on Remembrance Day? Will there be a reunion, I guess is the question.
Well, I don't know. All I know is that, I put the word out there. I had to find Kevin, and that took me a little bit to try to connect with the students because it was 15 years ago. But I can tell you that in 2044, we will make an effort to go back to Juno Beach because it was a time capsule and we promised the students that we would open it up. So I guess we'll ramp up the media again and see what we can do. But thank goodness for Facebook, we could connect with students.
Okay. Well, hopefully if Juno Beach is in 2044, Hong Kong will be shortly thereafter.
Yeah, it'll be the following year.
Linda does have a question. She says, my dad was a POW, and I wanted to ask how the veterans were chosen for each student to research.
It was based on the knowledge that we received. If we had information about a veteran, then that's how we chose them. If there was no information, we couldn't really pass anything on to the students. So we were lucky enough to get over 200, opportunities for research. And if there wasn't much research, we made sure that the students knew a lot about the battle and what had happened, so they could sort of weave that into their stories.
Okay, let's see. Ian says, I enjoyed seeing the pictures of the cemetery. My great uncle is buried there. Thank you for all of your hard work. I know my dad would appreciate your work and the students learning more about the history of Hong Kong. So that actually prompts a question for me, Nancy. To what extent is the subject taught in high schools today? Do you have any appreciation for that?
Well, I do, because I think when the curriculum was revamped, Hong Kong was part of the curriculum from then on. And I know I always taught it. My husband always taught it. It was something that we were really interested in also, helping this along anytime we could. And I'm really quite excited as well about the research that's being done now through the Métis veterans. I guess the funding that you got, because that will be another avenue that we can reach teachers with and get that story told again today. And I think that that's going to really keep things going.
Okay. All right, we'll give another moment for people to ask their questions. But I don't see any coming in, so I'll just leave one last opportunity. Kevin and Nancy, if there's anything further you'd like to add before we, oh, sorry, here's a question from Jesse. For both Nancy and Kevin, what was the most memorable part of the project for you?
Kevin?
Good question. Yeah, I'm thinking. I was hoping you were going to jump in.
I'll tell my story. It'll give you a little bit of time to I think for me,
There's
the most memorable part was meeting the veterans and working with the veterans. That always really, it was just, I'm speechless. It was just amazing. And I remember I think the most poignant thing that happened in Saiwan was during the ceremony, and I was standing, I think, next to Flash Clayton, and all of a sudden, all of these dragonflies came out of nowhere. I don't know if you remember that, but it was just, wow. I looked to Flash and I said, oh my gosh, what is this? And he said, they know you're here. That was amazing.
It's beautiful. Yeah, I think mine would also have to be the ceremony itself, but and my particular memory within it is the views. For anyone who's been to the cemetery, it's just, the views are incredible. Just the mountains and the water, and I just remember having this really sort of overwhelming feeling of gratitude for both being there, but also for everything that had happened there, and for being a Canadian, and just all of that sort of coming together in a really powerful moment. And it was a beautiful day. We got extremely lucky with the weather, and it just all felt important and right that we were there doing this and telling these stories. And so that it just all sort of came together in that moment for me. But there were so many others. I agree with Nancy. All the interactions with the veterans and other students who were all touched by these stories was really powerful.
Thank you to you both. And a final word, I guess, from Stan says, my father died in 1948, and your presentation gives me an idea of what he went through. So that's a great statement on Stan's behalf. Okay, if we have no other questions, then I think we will bring it to a close. So I want to thank you again, Nancy and Kevin, for taking the time to prepare this and present your presentation this evening. Very informative and very touching as well. My father, as you know, was a Hong Kong veteran, and certainly touches me as it has so many others this evening. So thank you very much. And thank you everybody for attending this evening. I do want to point out that we have another presentation coming up, which is on Monday, November 22nd. There is a documentary which will be shown on CBC Gem, The Fence, which is about life behind the fence in Sham Shui Po POW camp from 1941 to 1945. So there'll be more information coming about how you can watch that and how you can watch the documentary. And then on November 22nd, we will have a discussion with the director of the film, and some of the people who appear in the film will also speak. So with that, thank you very much, and good evening, everybody. Bye-bye.